Welcome to Rules of Villainy, where three new trading card game players quest and challenge their way to the competitive top tables and discuss their opinions on Disney's Lorcana. I'm Villain Vince, joined by my two co-hosts, Villain Andy, and as always, the mayor of Lorcana himself, Brad. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey,
Good.
what's up, Vince?
Feeling really good. Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah. As always, trying to flare it up a little bit as we get into our groove and routine. But more about routine, Andy, you've got some news for us about some new things that we're doing.
Yeah, I've got some exciting news. We are hosting an event with some of our friends in the area, some of our teammates here. It'll be this Saturday at 1:00 Central Time. We are going to be live streaming a 16-person tournament where we've got 4 of the Ursula promo prizes and one of the Ursula playmats up for as prizing for a bunch of our friends in the area who either couldn't make it to an event or made it to several events and got very close but just couldn't quite grab one of those cards or playmats. And we hope everyone can tune in, and it's going to be mine and Vince's and a couple of our other teammates' first foray into some of this commentating. So stop on by, enjoy the stream, catch some highly riveting Lorcana games for sure.
Yeah. So, Brad, you gonna get that Ursula and playmat?
Yeah, I forgot.
Not likely. Yeah, I mean, you guys, if that's not compelling enough, you can follow the mayor through this tournament and see how he does.
Mayor.
Am I going to get it? Who knows? I would be more comfortable if everything was established and knowing what I'm even going to play, but I have no idea. So I'm just going to go and hope to have fun. I know that I'm going to have fun because I'm going to be surrounded by you guys and everybody that we play with regularly, and so it should be a good time.
Well, I will say, here's the thing: is the odds are probably about as equal of you winning as the stream going off without a hitch. So those two things are probably tied. Because although Andy and I have had a foray into commentating, it's our actual first foray into live streaming.
Commentating, you're right.
Yeah, live commentating, which is a whole different ballgame. But yeah, please tune in this Saturday. What was the time again, Andy?
It'll be 1 p.m. Central Time, so that's like the Chicago sliver.
And
2 p.m.
where
Eastern.
are folks going to be able to see it?
They'll be able to catch it on our YouTube page. That's youtube.com @Rules of Villainy. Or if you're watching it right now, you're already here.
Or you can go to villainy.inc, which links to our link tree, and you can find all of our social media there. Moving on into Shimmering Skies, y'all. So we're a little over a week into, right? No, wait.
Yeah.
Man,
not even a week.
Is it not even a week?
Nope.
See? But it'll be a week when you're listening to this. So we record on a Wednesday. So it's not even a week. So we're like 5 days in to Shimmering Skies. So we did a lot of events this weekend. So tell me both, what are your thoughts and what'd you all do?
You want to start, Andy?
Sure. I was able to do 3 sealed events over the weekend. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They were a lot of fun. I did not pull anything good in any of them. I did do better than our teammate Reckless, aka Ron.
Oh no.
He had a bit of a bad streak there, but yeah, I did fairly average. Yeah, I think I went 2-2, 2-1. I wish I pulled better cards.
Ron doesn't need that great of pulls, given that he got the chase on this set. I think
first night.
He did pull a Mufasa. But yeah,
Enchanted.
Overall, it was really interesting seeing some of the different ways people played all the new cards in the limited format, and there are a lot of uninkables in this set, and a lot of them are very, very high cost uninkables. So it made playing around them very difficult. but I was able to see several people use several of them to great impact. The one that the genie that it keeps all of your people exerted. There's also one that exerts all of your people.
Anna.
I don't think both of those are getting played in the same turn, but a lot of weird things happen in limited. So it was a lot of fun though. Ultimately,
Yeah, I did
Right.
find that those 9, the 9 uninkable slots, didn't super find a home in a lot of those limited decks in sealed. Although there is one card, and I cannot remember it off the top of my head, but it's basically for every card I think your opponent has damage on it. Is it right that it reduces it by one cost?
It's Robin Hood, right?
there's one that with your damage as well.
Or maybe
So,
it's your damage. I don't remember exactly.
there may
which
be
one it was.
both, honestly, because I think there's one that you get 2 less cost for each damage character you have.
That's Gaston.
Gaston, and then
Yeah.
I believe there's one where it is cheaper for each damage on opposing. So like a Maui with 4 damage on him, it is 4 cheaper.
Interesting.
So
Just I had that go up against me in one of my.
The only one I saw come out.
And I was like, oh no, and there's nothing I could do with that. Like,
I was playing John at game night, and he got the Olaf out because I made, I guess, a mistake. I didn't realize it was a mistake because it's a brand new set, new and sealed format. But I loaded up the board on like turn 4 or 5 with a bunch of low cost people. He's like, well, I guess I can get this out now, and dropped that 6/6 9-drop Olaf that was just, and he's evasive too, so I couldn't answer it.
Olaf.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. Oh man, I didn't know you pulled that. That's beautiful.
I know. I
Yeah.
pulled it the other day, but I was gonna keep it a surprise. I was like literally gonna post it in our chat, but I was like, what
Yeah,
a
for those
way
of
to
you-
surprise folks.
for
Yeah,
those of
I
you
had no idea.
listening, he's taunting us with an enchanted Olaf, which may be a fairly unplayable card in constructed, but is a very beautiful enchanted in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
It is
Yeah.
a very pretty enchanted.
Him and Marshmallow hanging out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, speaking of enchanteds, though, somebody got the enchanted that they wanted.
I did. A big update for everybody who listened last week. I made it clear that I will do whatever it takes to get that scar. The minute somebody mentions in our local group,
And he did everything.
as soon as I see that scar, I'm jumping on the opportunity to get it. And one of our locals who I didn't see him at all during Ursula's return, but for somehow he's back. He opened 7, I think, boxes and posted his haul in a local Discord, and I saw the scar there, and I said, Nick, I got to get that card, man. What do you want for it? He's like, well, we don't really want it, but we're looking for a Robin Hood, a Rapunzel, and a Diablo. And I'm like, deal, whatever. I got a play set of all of them. I don't play them all at the same time. Like, I can afford to get rid of those 3. And now I got this beautiful. The lighting in here is not good, but my scar. I'm so happy for it. Yeah,
very pretty card, and
Gonna
so
get it
I'm
graded?
glad.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, probably a little bit later. I'm gonna keep it in my deck box for now in that little window to show it off because it's just so pretty.
Very nice.
It is very nice. Andy, you pulled 3 enchanteds. Is that right?
Yeah, from this set, we got the King Candy enchanted. We got the You're Welcome, and we got the Vanellope. And then
Vanellope von Schweetz.
opening packs is an addiction. You should definitely get help. But I found a first chapter box for a reasonable price, and I also got one of those. And
That's
pulled this
beautiful.
Bell enchanted.
What do you want for it?
I'll give you
I don't know.
Jasmine. My
I don't
offer
know.
still
You have to
stands.
take it up for my wife. You have to take it up with my wife.
I'll give you-
We'll
I'll give you 2 princesses for that one, Jasmine and Anna.
We've got Jasmine. But
dang it.
We did get. Yeah, it's a good one. I was gonna say we got both the Wreck-It Ralphs. They go
Yep.
together with yours.
The Villainy, the Villain Support Center, which that'll have to be a segment in the future. Who knows what that'll be? I don't know.
I got a story for you guys real quick.
Let's hear it.
We had that sealed on Monday night. Typically, Vince and I run the event together and open to play at our local store. Vince overslept, had a headache. I'm like, sure, I can handle this on my own. And we 7 people showed up to fire off a tournament. And I'm like, well, I might as well get into it, make it an even number, right? And because I did that, I didn't quite pay much attention to the melee. Or I mean, I did. I told everybody their matchups and everything. But when it got to round 3, the wrong 2 of the 4 games were the wrong people playing each other. And I felt so bad about it because one of the 2-0s played a 1-1 maybe, or an 0-2, I don't know, and the other 2-0 was playing another 1-1, and I realized that after I finished my game that I just dropped the ball in so badly, and was like, well, they're both playing for a playmat, and we don't have time to get, the store is going to close here in like 15 minutes, so if they both 3-0 tonight, I'm just going to buy the other one to play Matt because I don't know what to do with this situation. But fortunately, Sal, who we saw in Atlanta, he made his way to Atlanta, got his picture with us. He beat me in round 2, but then lost in that last game anyway. So we only had 1 3-0. He reserved the Bell mat that wasn't in stock yet, and I just wanted to say that, yeah, that's what happens when you guys aren't there to support, especially you, Vince, who's the melee master. I screw everything up.
Yeah, I'm trying to think though, like, there might be a possibility that a person would still go 3-0 in melee in an 8
and play a 1-1.
In an 8-person in an 8-person tournament they wouldn't, because for those that are curious about the background of this a little bit, and I don't want to belabor, we could talk about this at length. If you're interested, drop a comment. But basically the crux of it is that melee will match you in each round to your nearest opponent throughout your rounds of Swiss. Now, that doesn't always do that. It'll sometimes drop you or bump you up to a record there. But basically, the theory is that if you have an 8-person tournament, or let's just say 4-person tournament, that first round, everybody's a free-for-all. The second round, you will then generally match one the victory. So if you're 1-0, you'll
play the other 1-0.
The other 1-0. Yeah. Unless you've already played that person in Swiss.
Right.
So that's the other reason. That's the other like kind of hiccup. It won't rematch you. Now some people do have questions about this. Like, well, what happens then? Like when I played them in Swiss, and now I'm gonna play them again in bracket. And then the thing is like bracket is basically a whole new tournament. In melee, your record previously does not matter, except in how you're paired going into the finals, quarterfinals, semifinals, octofinals. Right. So like if you're ranked 1 and you'll match with whoever's 8 basically in like a quarterfinals. Right. But other than that, it's a brand new tournament. So you could be matched with somebody that you were matched with in Swiss, but you should not be matched with somebody you're in Swiss in a regular tournament for the most part, unless, you have to meet a certain amount of folks at the tournament.
Right. I don't think it's your nearest opponent technically. I think you're guaranteed to go against someone with the same number of points, unless, like you said, you get paired up or down. But I do believe it's random in there, so you won't if you look at the standings, I don't think it's always 1 versus 2, 3 versus 4.
So it actually goes down by all of your kind of match opponents. So the first round is a little weird. Like the first 2 rounds are a little weird. It is more random, but actually as you advance in the tournament, you are much more likely to compete against somebody that has a much more similar record to you.
Right. No, you're always with the exception of 1 person per round, you should always be playing against someone who has the same number of points as you.
Right. But your point is like you basically the melee puts the algorithm is saying like let's put in all like everybody that has the same record in a hat and then just pulling them out at random. And that's not quite what it's doing.
I'm because otherwise like the nearest opponent would have your lowest the lowest ranked person with the no wins getting the pair down, which I don't think always happens. Right, so if there's 3 people that are 2-0, right, or 3-0.
Honestly, like I said, reversing back to the original point, if you got questions and you want us to dig into it, more than happy to.
We're getting into
not going to dig into it right this second.
Point is, I'm bad at melee.
It's all good. It's all good. You know what? I'll say this much: it is really, really hard to run Melee and be in the tournament at the exact same time.
Yeah.
So it's hard to devote both of those. Generally speaking, when I'm doing that, I'm generally not paying as much attention to what I'm doing in game and more
Sure.
paying attention to. So you gotta devote your attention somewhere. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. What matters is people had fun and had a successful event. I think that's all that really matters at the end of the day. And I think you accomplished that as you always
Yeah.
do, sir.
Oh, thank you.
But we got a lot of other news. We got D23 was this past weekend, and I wish I could have gone. Definitely gonna try to go in 2026. Reserving those thoughts for the future that I can get a ticket to go to Anaheim in 2026 to go to the D23, but we had a lot of information. So we had been wondering, where are these Continentals going to be? And guys, we found out. So the European Continentals are going to be in Paris in December 2024. So that's December this year. The North American Continentals are going to be in California in January 2025. So I was wrong. I made that prediction last week with no information about whether or not, could you do both? I made that prediction they were going to be the same weekend. They are not. They are going to be in 2 separate months. So
Yeah. I think it's still yet to be seen if you could do both, though, right?
That is true. We don't know.
For viewership, they're definitely going to do them on different weekends or different days to try and, rake in as many people watching as possible.
So
but
not competing with themselves. Yeah.
It makes sense.
To be fair, there's only one person that's qualified in both, so it's not like it's going to happen a lot. There is some potential.
What happens if that person plays in both events, though, and qualifies twice for Worlds, right? Does he get to play both tables at the same time? Is he running back and forth between 2 games?
Yeah,
so there's a lot of digging.
Well, so what I would imagine would happen is much like happens right now. So you can't qualify more than once to Continentals.
Right.
So if you do qualify more than once, you then end up they just drop it down so the next person that would qualify qualifies.
Oh, that's me.
Is it your opponent or do you know that?
No, so I vaguely understand this, so please, if I get this wrong, let us know. Let me know. I could get this wrong. I don't want to be spreading out misinformation, but my basic understanding is that when you get to the qualifying round in a DLC, right, which is
32 or 16.
I think it's 16.
Playing in the 32, going into 16 if it's a 2K, or you're at 16 going into 8 for the 2K or for 1K.
So let's say it's 16. If you've already qualified for a continent, an invite for the continent, they drop to the 17th player. They get to qualify. That's
so basically it might not be your opponent, right? So you haven't qualified, your opponent beats you, but then someone who maybe beat a first place person or someone, in Swiss it gets really weird, who becomes 17th because none of the losers played each other. That would be interesting. I'd be interested,
Yeah, so it's that kind of ranking into the thing. Yeah. I think this is definitely a question that somebody that's more in tune with what's going on in the top table should answer.
If you got an invite to intercontinentals or whatever by being the 17th person because somebody else already made it, hit us up in the comments. We'd love to have you on the podcast. And
I do think this happened. I think this happened in Chicago, because Chicago is the second tournament, and I think there were folks that made it to that qualification round in both Atlanta and in Chicago.
Yeah, we met someone.
So I don't know what happened in that scenario. So that's I think the answer there. So I'd have to look and see. And maybe I'll have an answer next week on that. But what do you guys think? Paris and Disneyland.
Exciting.
Pretty cool. I think it's kind of overshadowed by the next line in our news here, which is the Worlds coming also in 2025.
But we don't know when.
We don't. Yeah, 2025. They did say the year, so at some point during the year, it's in Disney World in Orlando, Florida, and I believe my wife has already started buying
Planning.
Disney gift cards at Target and picking out the outfits and deciding which of the resorts we're going to say. We definitely don't have the money to be doing all of that, but I really want to get told the boys here I'm going. I don't know that I'll qualify and make it that far, but I definitely want to go as an attendee. That sounds like such an awesome event. The first World Championships of Lorcana.
Yeah,
I would like to try to go as well.
They talked about on the panel, right, that there's going to be ways to. I mean, there's going to be attendee badges for sure, but I think there's going to be other ways to qualify for it outside of the DLCs. Maybe I don't know if they elaborated too much on it, but they talked about other ways to qualify or something that was
So my understanding is you can. I know for the Continentals, you can enter a side event.
Maybe that's what I'm
has
thinking
an
of.
opportunity to get you into the main event.
Yes, last chance.
I don't know if
qualifier.
that. Yeah. So I don't think there's another. But the thing is I think at Worlds there's going to be plenty to do. Even it's going to be a celebration of Lorcana than just the Worlds, because they released a really fancy card.
Right, the whole new world card.
So beautiful.
Whole new world.
we got the reprise.
we were in the middle of a sealed when that news dropped. All the news dropped on Friday night, and somebody showed me that picture, and I was like, "That's beautiful." And I was like, I said in our local Discord, I'm like, "Yeah, we're all gonna get it because we're all gonna." I thought it was the next Dragonfire like promotional card for the 2025 DLC events. It took me like 6 hours later to realize, that I was way wrong. I'm not gonna get that card unless I have a really big wallet.
I think they're. Go on.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just saying, I think that's what you are mistaken about, Brad. I don't know that there are ways to qualify to Worlds, but I believe there will be ways for you to get this card without competing in Worlds directly. So attendees will have. They almost kind of hinted like it would almost be like a scavenger hunt sort of. I mean, they said quest, and I know they were talking about some.
Which we're going to talk about here in a minute.
Yeah, but they made it seem like you would be able to earn this in other ways, which is
interesting.
I think the question will be is like, do you get this if you will there be two variations like there are on the Rapunzel
non-foil,
be a non-foil and a foil. So there's a lot to know there. We did know though that there is going to be a 1-of-1 Golden Mickey World Champion card, which is wild. So which of us is gonna go get that card?
Well, definitely not Brad.
Wow. Oh my gosh,
I was gonna make that joke, but it hurts even worse when you make it.
We were
fired.
We were being spicy before the cast, and I'm sorry.
We've
Brad.
been villains. We've been true villains.
Listen,
that's a villainous thing to say. I mean, we have to expect that.
All right. Well,
this Saturday, 1:00 Central Time, you win the Ursula card. You win the Ursula playmat. That is the first step. All right, and then we head to the DLC in Seattle. We win that. All right. Then the Intercontinental in. We just said it. I forget already. One of the Disneys
in Disneyland.
Disneyland.
Okay, we don't win that one. That's fine. We head over to the one in Paris. We hit that one up. We win that one instead. Then we're going to Worlds. We got this. You're just one step along the way to your journey.
Okay.
All right. Well, some other news is that we did learn on the day of Set 5's release, they told us more about Set 6. Seafaring Adventure, per Ryan Miller at the panel there. Also, Rescue Rangers was revealed. The Black Cauldron is coming in 2025. And Pocahontas, and my personal favorite, Pixar, coming in 2026. So a lot forecasting out. I tell you what, that Pixar, man, that is going to bankrupt me. Like, they were just like, hey, we know we've got you, Vince. Can can you spend more money on Lorcana? And then they're like, oh, well, let's add Pixar to it because I tell you what, they add Pixar Enchanted. I want them all.
Yeah.
They're gonna,
All.
they're gonna slow roll it, right? They're not. It's not just gonna be like an all Pixar set. You're still gonna have 10 Mickeys in the set, and I think the only Pixar card we can technically say is confirmed is Merida, right?
Yep.
Because Rochelle said in the panel that you would be able to finish your princess deck with the addition of Pixar, which implies Merida. And so I think they're just going to have, it's going to be like Wreck-It
right.
Ralph. They're just going to have one
did.
Merida card and none for like 4 more years. Told you Pixar was coming.
Yeah, it's one of those things that was a big debate of whether or not Pixar would ever come because they've been
terrible. Go on.
I don't know if I just glitched out. My screen just flashed. It was really weird, but it's one of those things where it was a big debate of whether or not Pixar would ever come, and it's been settled. And it's one of my ideas has always been that, like, you know, they've been adventuring. They went out into the Inklands, and they've, you know, Ursula's Return was kind of dark or whatever. And I wondered after 5 sets of these cards so far with the classic Disney, if they would venture into some Pixar theme where like all the art was, you know, the characters in like the Pixar form or whatever, where it's like something strange here. But I'm still speculating. I'm just happy that it is confirmed and all the possibilities that they could do.
Was it really a big debate though? Like, I feel like it was pretty much a given that Pixar was going to eventually come in, given how kind of tight Pixar is with Disney Animation Studios these days. I mean, I know they're technically separate.
Yeah. People. Pixar is a different studio. The licensing is different. It will never come to Lorcana.
Listen, people have negative opinions about all the things it's coming. I'm excited. You know, I think there's more debate about whether or not Pocahontas was going to come. I'm glad to see that she is coming into Lorcana. I mean, it is a very contentious, you know, subject matter, and you know, I totally reconcile that. But I do, you know, I think Pocahontas is a really good princess to include in there. And I also, what I really appreciate about Lorcana, the game itself, is how empowering it is in creating, like, you know, you have like Cinderella, and you have Cinderella Stouthearted because you've got these, you know, Floodborn variations. So, I mean, just, you know, it's really great to see that it's like, yeah, we can still honor these classics of having these princess characters, but in the game, they, you know, they don't have to have a man save them, right? They can be these knights, they can be these warriors and stuff that we've had. And I think that's what's really cool about the game. So I'm super excited about it.
I played a sealed event actually at with you, Vince, and we played against one of our teammates' son. He's adorable, and apparently, according to Vince, officially the best Lorcana player in the whole area. So,
I mean, he beat me. He beat you.
He went 3-0.
He went 3-0 in that event at 5 years old.
So I was playing the cards. Obviously, it's sealed. I'm learning the cards. And he was explaining to me every single card as I played it, specifically where it was from, what franchise, what movie. Aww. He knew that Gale, the specific gust of
Frozen
wind
2
was
Frozen
from
2.
Not Frozen, but Frozen 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I played one, which was the Pride Lands. In this case, it's Tropical Rainforest, I believe. Or Tropical Oasis,
I think. Or Oasis,
yeah, whatever it is. And I play the Pride Lands, and he takes the card and he looks at it, and he goes, "This isn't the Pride Lands." Yeah, it is. That's what it says right there. You know, you're playing with your cards face up because you can't read. All right, I think I know the Pride Lands when I see it. You know, he goes, "The Pride Lands is a desert. It's dry. There are no trees or rain there." And I'm like, oh, I guess you makes a good point. And like Vince said, Lorcana, I had to explain to him that basically in Lorcana, there's normal versions of cards, but then there's also these Dreamborn. There's these fantasy, you know, what they want to be, what they could be, what they, you know, dream to be. And so I thought it was a really cool sort of natural moment where, you know, the idea of something being not what it normally is came up for Lorcana there. So
I'll tell you what, I'm more excited about more of the lore. If I have one critique, which is that I wish the troves still came with the booklets that they did in the first and second chapter, because I would love for them to include more of the lore of Lorcana in written form so we could read more about it, because I think I think that's going to be really exciting and fun, to have the lore of Lorcana combined with the Disney properties and stuff.
Lorcana TV show when?
Yeah, no kidding.
Disney Plus tie-in and stuff. So
I
the
like
last
the
thing,
fancy deck tech they had in the booklet. I want to bring those back.
You heard it here first. Ravensburger and Disney, please bring the booklets back.
Yes.
Something that was teased by Rochelle, the global community manager for Lorcana at D23, was this idea of a Lorcana quest. So more leaning into the social play, which you may hear of more termed at your local stores as casual. So this is that social play. You're just going to have fun, creating princess decks, creating racer decks, pirate decks, broom decks, these themed decks that you just want to go have fun, and you don't necessarily want to be super competitive. So, Lorcana has two kind of mechanics, right? We've got the quest mechanic, and the challenge mechanic. And that challenge mechanic is the real competitive side. That's why we've got the Disney Lorcana challenges. Well, they teased that there'll be more organization around the concept of questing in this social spirit. So we don't know a lot about it because I think it's still largely in development. But it sounds pretty interesting to me, having this like kind of journey, more scavengery hunt basis to it, where you can maybe go to theme parks and have characters sign your cards and, do these things that get you achievements that maybe unlock something, like we don't really know. This is kind of like how Ravensburger and particularly Rochelle explained it at the D23 panel, but I am pretty excited about that.
Yeah, getting your card signed is something people already do, and that's kind of how they prefaced it as well. And then they showed examples of vanilla cards that we already have in the game, but with just a signing box to you to.
Right.
It's basically encouraging you to go to the parks and meet these characters and do these cool things that the game is promoting, and it seems really cool. I'm already putting enough into the game, and now that going into the parks to get cards signed, it's a lot, but I'm probably gonna do it.
I mean, listen, I'll tell you what, I never once thought I would be trying to get artists to sign cards, but I mean, we saw that at D23. I think Nicholas Cole, the artist who did the Stitch Rockstar and also did one of my favorite cars, the BLT Mickey.
Did my Scar too.
The
different Scar, the set 2 one, not the enchanted card.
But it did my favorite card, that Brave Little Tailor Mickey, signing stuff there. But and I was at Gen Con and I got cards signed by artists, something I never thought I would do, and I want to do more of. Like, honestly, that's what I'd be excited to go into, like, these continentals or worlds, is to get to meet more of the artists and to get to meet Steve Warner and
Ryan Miller.
Oh, Ryan Miller, thank you.
Yep.
And getting and knowing more of the designers and stuff. We got the opportunity to play some of them when we were at the DLC in Chicago. I think you played one of the game designers, Brad, right? Because I ended up playing Rochelle. Again, sorry. I mean, it's like I just wanted those promos. That's gonna be my running gag here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm pretty excited about it, and I hope we hear more. But with that, let's go into our main segment. So, not too much going on in the world of the meta yet in this first weekend, but we did have a fairly large-ish tournament. Battle Bear in Germany, I think you said, Andy, is where this store is. So,
yes.
What do we got here, Brad?
We got the top 4 decks from Battle Bear. It was 44 people in the first big tournament into the new set. So I thought it would be interesting to just kind of go over, maybe not spend a whole lot of time going through, and especially for the audio format. But there is some interesting things here or some things that I found interesting about some of these decks, and I thought we could go through a couple of them, at least the top 4 or top 2 and 3 are both Steel Song, but they're a little bit different. And what I thought was the most interesting about them was they weren't running Naveen, which is supposed to be one of the big players for Amber Steel Song decks this set. So I'm opening up the first one now. It is a Amber Emerald Sing Together deck, which we saw a lot of toward the end. Yeah, Lemon Lime. We saw a lot of it toward the end of Ursula's Return with the Under the Sea package, bringing Kita out to reduce the strength of the opposing board and basically sending everything to the bottom of the other player's deck by singing together the Under the Sea card. So that ended up taking number 1, which I don't know. Was there any surprises there to you guys? There's not a whole lot added to it other than... Go ahead.
I built this deck today, this exact deck, and took it to League Night. And I'll tell you what, it is much like the set Ursula's Return version of it is a hard deck to pilot.
No, I thought you were going to say it's bad. It looks bad.
But yeah, I would also say
that's reserved for you to say, Andy.
But I would also say it is not. My biggest thing here is I think it needs more aggro on it because it really relies on this action song mechanic, and that actually can take a while to build up. And I will say there's a card in the meta, which is that Pete, that can really wreck this deck for a turn. So it's like, I was talking to Jesus, who we've mentioned on this pod before, and I think, I would probably find a way to put the 1-drop Daisy Duck into this deck to be a little bit more aggro. It does run a decent amount of uninkables, but I don't think it's that many uninkables.
There's a lot of discard too. So the Daisy draw that you're giving the other player, you could just be pushing them right into discarding whatever character they give them that as well. Yeah, what I really like and what I noticed in the sealed events that I did is that Rapunzel's Tower is kind of a beast to deal with the 8 cost on it, and giving every character their +3 willpower. I think that's going to find a home in a lot of these. I'm surprised it's not. Well, maybe I'm not surprised. I was going to say I'm surprised it's not running in the hyper aggro decks just to keep their little people alive. But there's so many little people the big questers that you don't really need to. You just need to get to 20 really fast.
But I also just think like the answer there is like you don't want to. You'd much rather spend your resources putting another character or threat on the board than you do wanting to like play one of these locations and then spend resources to move them. So I don't know. I'll say this much. I only played it once tonight. I mean, I played it a few times tonight, but I've only played it for one day. I'm very surprised that this is the top deck out of here.
Yeah.
I mean, if you'd asked me like going into this, like, what do you think is going to be like, if not knowing anything about the meta, what would you build and take? I would almost certainly say Steel Song. Like that would probably be my initial thought to say, is to build Steel Song or build a low to ground aggro like an Amber Amethyst.
Are you surprised there's not a hyper aggro here in the top 4? I know Andy's
early on in the meta, I am. I think if it was later on in the meta, I'd be less surprised. But I think early on in the meta, I am a little surprised that the aggro decks aren't. But I think part of the reason for that is people expected aggro to be so heavy, so people are teching against that. And I think it will be interesting to see how that plays out, because we've seen this personally, especially with like Ruby Sapphire, is that when you heavily tech against aggro, you make your deck worse against every other option out there, and you aren't even guaranteed to win those aggro matches. And I think what we'll find is the folks that are teching so heavily against these aggro decks are making their decks less playable for other decks that will eventually rise up into the meta. That's my takeaway there. Andy, what are your thoughts?
I mean, there's there's a lot of things. For one, there's only one Rapunzel's tower in here, so that seems to
I didn't
have
realize that.
little to no effect. Same with Kita. This is misclassified as a sing together deck. There's only 3 Under the Sea and 2 Big Kita. I do agree with Vince. I think this deck doesn't really have a solid win condition. It's not doing enough discarding. You talk about the little Daisy Duck and how it's anti-synergistic with the discard, but yet they've got a card like You're Welcome in there, which presumably they're expecting to use some of the time as removal as opposed to as card draw. So I also agree this deck probably had some luck on their side. It is a playable deck for sure, but I think we also saw in the top 8 of this tournament, which was like 40 some odd people, but I think we saw a Baja Blast deck in here, the green blue
Yep.
in there, and that list was mind-boggling, to say the least. It was hard to wrap my head around, but I don't know this player. I expect maybe they're fairly good. They probably had a lucky run at the tournament. I'm not surprised that we don't see aggro in the top here at all, because I think the aggro deck is a coin flip. It's not great. And I also think
here to here first. It's a coin flip, so flip them coins.
I think you're right. We will see more people tech against the aggro, but I think we'll find that we won't need to tech against the aggro with those other decks, and slowly those other decks will get their better cards back rather than their inefficient aggro tech cards, and aggro will just still be playing 5 Lilos on turn 2 or whatever they do,
Well, 1, they can't have 5 Lilos, but gotcha there.
Jokes on you. 4 of them are named Maleficent.
My suspicion is that this early into the meta, that some of these folks, like I said, I don't know any of these. I mean, we know one of them as a player in the Lorcana community. I don't know who the other folks in the top 4 are, but I suspect that these are decks that they have played in previous sets and are now just adding teching the chapter 5 or Shimmering Skies cards into these decks. Because honestly, that's really, to be frank, that's the only way I can make sense of this Amber Emerald deck as is, because I really struggle to find out exactly what it is trying to do.
Actually, if we look at the other 2 decks, the 2 Steel Songs in here, the second place was Pavel. Some of you may know him from Pixelborn Connect, the webcam matchmaking game platform. His Steel Song deck here, from what I can tell here, the only new card is the new Daisy Duck. They added 4 of the Daisy Ducks in here. They do have some spice from other sets, like the Aerial Sonic Warrior, which is not a bad card. Lawrence, if you listened last week, my villain of the set, made a huge comeback. Piglet, we know and love. So this is very stock standard. He found 4 daisies and added them into his deck. I can't tell exactly what he cut, and
no swords.
That was it. Yeah. And the next third place did have swords. That was a slight differentiation. But again, I think only so they had Daisy Duck as well. They added that in there. They also run the Robin Hood package from previous sets. They have that card Vince mentioned earlier, Pete, games referee. So when you play this character, opponents can't play actions until the start of your next turn. So it's like a B prep turn off switch, better than Tiana, but only for 1 turn. So I think
we're gonna see that card make its way into more decks.
I really want to see a purple steel deck with it, or I want to try it out, because you just keep bouncing them and just stopping them from doing an action heavy deck, right? So
That's where
I
it
have
gets-
ideas. I just got to build it.
Yeah, but I think if anything, this is telling us sort of that we're still very early on in the set. So like Vince said, a lot of these players are playing. So I know for a fact that Pavel is a big fan of Steel Song and has been playing it since the very beginning. And so it makes sense that he continues to play it. It looks like the last one, the Steel Sapphire deck, does have maybe some more of the new cards in there. I see
2 or 3. Yeah.
Chicha, which
Chicha.
Donald.
Chicha. I don't know.
I don't know.
The Donald Duck Focus Flatfoot.
The Chicha
Yep.
card does work. I will
Yeah.
say that. That is a very, very good draw engine. And the support can come in handy as well for taking out something like a location. Donald Duck, I'm not the biggest fan of. They have actually Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck in this deck. They both do the same thing. When you play the character, you put the top card of your deck in the inkwell. The Simba is a really interesting one. 3 of these Simbas, when you play this character, you may banish chosen item or location. It's a 6 cost 3/5, and I only quest for 1. My thought is, isn't the Beast, was it hard-headed, just better?
He just does items though.
It is just items. But then I thought, isn't the
Cusco.
Cusco just
Yeah.
better?
But Cusco gives you ink, or gives the other person ink, which is one downfall of it. But he quests for 2, so he's essentially the same card and not
Diamond
shiftable.
target.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So-
so this has a few more spice from the new set. But yeah, I guess the moral of the story here is play what you know and love, what you're comfortable with, and just sort of tinker with adding a couple new cards here or there to the deck that you're familiar with, and see how they play, and go from there.
You know
Guess
what
I'm gonna
we
have to
didn't
stay on
see?
blue steel.
You know what we didn't see?
What's that?
Ruby Amethyst.
It's true. Is that in
Was
the
it
top
even
8
in
at
the
all?
Yeah.
I broke
Nope.
up my deck. I was like, I saw when these
Wait.
Shimmering Skies came out
Wait.
that
You did what?
yeah, I broke it up. It's back filed away, and I built a new deck.
Wow.
Oh my! Who even are you?
I know.
I still have mine
Anyway.
right here.
As he like just fans it out.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts?
No,
No,
I'm interested.
excited to see. Yeah, I'm excited to see the results of new tournaments. There's actually one coming up this weekend on Saturday that I hear is going to be. It's only 16 players, but it's some of the top players in Lorcana playing on
Well, 15 of those.
current set. 15 and the mayor of Lorcana himself playing on set 5. Tune in, find out. We'll see there.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Well, next up is the segment that we have been previewing for a while now. It is dun-dun-dun, Constituents Corner with the Mayor. And so what we will do in this segment is we will take your listeners' questions and answer them on the podcast. And if you would like your question answered by the 3 villains here, you can just use our what is our Twitter account? You can
Sure.
Brad, you run it. What is our Twitter?
Rules of Villainy.
Rules of Villainy. We've really practiced this down here at this segment.
Leave a comment below is probably
and then-
another way.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Leave a comment below there as we go on. So what questions do we have, Mr. Mayor?
All right. The first one comes from John from our local Discord. He wants to know, how do players know the probability of drawing certain cards in their opening hand? I'll pass that off to you guys.
Andy.
That's what I
Your
said.
hyper geometric calculator.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's
this is
something
an
we-
Andy question for sure.
Yeah, hypergeometric math is something I learned about early when I started the game, actually doing limited formats, draft and sealed. I asked a friend who had some more experience and asked, how do I know how many uninkables to put in my deck? And basically, I can't do math. I'm not good at math for sure. I took topics in math for liberal arts majors. It's basically 4th grade math in college. So just Google hypergeometric calculator. You could probably just Google like card game math and find the same results as well, because we don't remember the word hypergeometric. I'll say it a few more times. But
for those that don't know and like are maybe a little bit more math inclined, it's a probability theorem basically. So it shows the probability of which, in given X many chances in a sample size, what are the chances that you will get X card? So putting this into context, right, is like, say you in Lorcana we have rules. So we say there are 60 cards. You have to have at least 60 cards in a deck.
Only 60.
Only 60.
I was gonna say, yeah, Andy. What do we do with that 61st card?
We throw it away. It's the worst.
Throw it away. Yeah, just
actually you save it and you get it signed by your buddy Brennan from Podcana. That's what I did with mine.
Yeah, that is exactly
my favorite card.
Which card was that?
It was it was the spell book, Sorcerer's spell book.
That was the wrong card to take out because that was
it was the worst card in my in my deck.
No, it was not. I can tell you that much. I already know it wasn't the worst card in your deck because it was the Sorcerer's spell book.
60 cards. You get the mulligans, right? You're saying you get 7 cards in your hand. You get up to 7 cards in the mulligan, so you can see 14 cards at the beginning of the game. You have 4 copies of a given card, or sometimes there are multiple cards. I know nowadays, one jump was a big one that people were doing the math on to make sure they could get one jump in their opening hand and how many they need to mulligan. But
now you've got Tipo.
Yeah, with Tipo. So now those numbers are 8. There's 8 of the target cards in your 60 card deck. And it basically gives you this probability to say how often you're going to be able to see those cards in your opening hand. The other common time you use a hypergeometric calculator would be something like Scuttle or Aerial, where you want to try and have a certain percentage of cards in your deck that are of the target type, item, song, so that when you look at the top 4, in this case, this is how many you're looking at, 4, what is the probability that you have in there? And I think, for example, the really common one a lot of people have memorized sort of is, I believe at 20 items or 21 items, you have a 75% chance of hitting with Aerial or Scuttle items or songs, respectively. But yeah, it is definitely something that is more advanced in deck building. But if you're ever wondering, if you're ever trying to project what you're going to be able to get in your opening hand, using something like a hypergeometric calculator can help you sort of maximize the probability that you are going to get something that you need. I think most commonly uninkables is a big one to try and make sure you don't get those uninkables or a target card like a 1 jump or something like that.
Unless you're playing against me, and then you should get all uninkables.
Oh, yeah.
And then you should also make sure that Aerial never gets a song or Scuttle never sees an item, but only when you're playing against me.
Wait until they have a 0 cost uninkable card that says put any card into your inkwell, and then I'll be able to play Oops, no inkables.
You just need that Inkcaster from last set.
There's never going to be a 0 cost card.
There'll be a 0 cost card.
You don't think so?
There already is a 0 cost card. Diablo costs 0. You just discard and pay nothing for it.
That's not a 0 cost card, though. That is
true
distinctly
cost,
not
right?
a 0 cost card.
We're gonna
everything in the game, I get it. We always say it's like, oh, you can sing this for free. It's like, no, you can't sing it for free. You have to exert your character in order to sing a character.
Oh no,
you have to
exert your rabbit. I'm gonna kill your rabbit next turn. Boo hoo! You exerted it to sing friends and get 2 more stinking cards.
Listen, I get it. I'm
free.
just saying that it's not free. It's not free. It has a
what
cost.
If you quested a dock
do it
and played a 1 cost for free?
What's that?
What if you quested a dock and played a 1 cost for free? Oh.
The silence.
With that, we move on to the next question of Constituents Corner. What do you got?
Maybe we should. Maybe we should.
Yeah, no. So you're right. There are some exceptions.
Really, I'm just messing with you.
Where No. You're right. But don't. I mean,
No.
so Doc, do you have to? Don't you have to exert though in order?
You have to
play
quest
that?
with them. Yes,
You have to
yes. So
quest,
you're
Yeah, you
making
have
him
to quest.
vulnerable.
So you
It's
do.
an
So,
effect.
yeah,
It's not a
It's
zero
not
cost card.
free, Brad.
I know. I just wanted, we give each
because
other
the
a hard
same-
time here.
No, but the same is true with like Pride Lands, the one from what was it, set 3,
Right.
where
Mhm.
people were at that deck where it's like if you played, you could just
Requires
quest
setup.
and it
Sure.
requires a setup,
Yeah.
and it requires you to like exert a character in order to draw. Like there's a
Right,
whole
right.
kind of mechanic and stuff. So
Yep.
nothing is yet quote unquote free. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing to do. Singing could be strategic, playing all these character cards, but I don't think there will be a zero cost card, at least
Yeah.
not anytime soon. But with
We'll
that,
see.
what's our next question?
The next question came from afar when Vince was on his villainous journey to Gen Con. We got a question from Tyler that said, "What are your thoughts on the 2-game format versus the 3-game format?" Does anybody want to start with that one?
Andy, do you want to start?
I'll start with it. Andy started with
Actually,
the
Brad,
last
you
one.
can start.
Yeah, no, it took some getting used to. There is, I feel like, an argument for both of them. There are decks that certainly benefit from the different formats, right? The switch to the 2-game format, I know it doesn't always feel that way. I feel like it goes faster. Like I don't know why. There are 2-game format games that take the full time, but for whatever reason, for me, I know going into it mentally that I got this game and this game to try to get a 2-0 and get the max amount of points out of it. So I think it's more fair because everybody gets a chance to go first, which is a huge advantage. Because in the 3-game format, they found, and I have found from, and I'm sure we all have from the countless games that we've played, that a lot of times if you win the dice roll and you get that advantage of going first twice, you're probably going to win the series, right? So it's
47% of the time.
47% of the time. So
lose.
almost
You only lose 47% of the time when you're on the draw, right? Hey, Vince, isn't that
Is that right?
Yeah, I think. I mean,
Isn't that
that
the
was
meme.
I think
That's the meme.
meme on
Yeah.
it. What
No,
I'll say is
you're
that
you're
I
absolutely
think
right,
that's
Brad.
when you're playing though, right? Really competitive players and stuff.
Yeah.
I think the math looks very different at your league night, right?
Yes.
I think on the play and a league night, you're probably winning. On the draw, like 60% of the time, I would bet. In most
On the play, yeah.
On the play, you mean, yeah.
60% of
On
the
the
time.
play, yeah, that's what I meant.
for sure.
But yeah,
Um,
as far as preference, it just depends on the scenario. Like if it's an all-day thing, like it's Chicago DLC or any of the DLCs, I'm picking the 2-game format just because each time that we played the full time out, it was we start at 10 and then we're there till I remember Atlanta, we didn't get back until the hotel room or leave the main auditorium where we were playing until like 9:30. It's an all-day thing, and if they were best of 3, I think it would just feel even longer.
We get
so
less
there you
games.
hear it, constituents. Brad says the 2-game format's the best superior format.
I said it's my
even-
preference, but yeah. What about you guys? What do you think?
Write your anger emails. No.
I think Brad's absolutely right. I think 2-game format is better for longer events. The more rounds you have, the better 2-game format feels to play in. A 2-game format with 16 people or something like that feels really awkward because it's basically a 3-game format tournament with just a ton of ties, and then you get the whole bonus point argument that you bring up as well, and the value that has. I like that we switched to top cut of best of 3 for sure in any of those tournaments, but I tend to agree with Brad that I think a longer event can benefit from the 2-game format, and I love the innovation that Ravensburger and Lorcana are trying to bring to the game here. We've said it here before. We love the sort of pivots that they make. We don't like the play draw disparity. They make the 2-game format. We don't like the bonus point. They adjust the point system. I wouldn't be surprised if we see continued iterations and improvements on the 2-game format to help address some of the complaints that people do have with the 2-game format. Some of the more draw, the tons of IDs that it can bring to an event. the awkward bubbling that it can cause, with your tiebreakers and things, and the lack of finality of the games that you play. Right, you go 1-1 with someone. Did you win? Well, yeah, but they also won, right? So it's just
Yeah.
I think there's room in the tournament scene for both, and I personally really enjoyed playing a variety of both 2-game and 3-game formats in the Ursula's return set championships, and I hope to continue doing that.
So my view really very much depends on what we're playing for on this. So I am very much a fan of the 2-game format when we're talking about competitive, pre-elimination games, because one, it allows for you to have more creative decks, in my opinion. I think having a 3-game format forces you to play decks that your deck selection is much more limited, because you want to play decks that move a lot faster, because you don't want to run out of time. And so I think that's one thing. I also think just the way tournaments run, there's less downtime in a 2-game format than a 3-game format, because if you're, if you win both rounds in a 3-game tournament, you go to 2-0 in that and stuff. It's like basically that there are a whole bunch of other people there, and you've got all this downtime, and maybe like you're having to go to time or turns in your 3-game tournament, and then now you going right into the next round because they're getting you, matching you, and then putting you into the next round. So I like that there's some downtime there. I don't have an issue with the finality of it, because I actually think one thing that I enjoy about the competitive scene is it feels less bad when you go 1-1 versus like going like 1-2-1 or something like that. Like there's feels better, and it feels like you've still got an opportunity, like you haven't like lost out of anything. Where I will say I think the 3-game format shines. Obviously, it's going to shine in the elimination, but it also shines in events like these sealed and draft formats, where it's like you really do need a final victory. Yeah, you can't have a tie. You need a victor. And I think that's fine because it's a much more limited event. They're much more. It's a much more even playing field to begin with, because you're, all getting the luck of your packs. You're getting, the luck of your, draft or your skills there too. Like it's both luck and skills, I think, in both of those. But everybody goes in not knowing exactly what they're going to play, and so I think there's some fun to that. The bubbling issue, which I mean, we didn't get a question of, maybe we'll answer in the future, I think can be answered by things like adding more Swiss rounds to these challenges, which is
absolutely
something that is like talked about. But that's my takeaway, is that I think they both have homes in different places, but I do think in these competitive events, whether they're set championships or the DLCs or these continentals or worlds, the 2-game format is good. My biggest gripe, I think, over this all is I still don't think you should get a bonus point for going 2-0. I think it should just be 3 points for a win, and that's it. So it's 3 or 6, or or 0, I guess.
Right.
But I just think it makes it hard, like conceptually in some ways, to do the math. It's like, okay, well now if I go here and these bonus points, and
that's a benefit though. Keeps people from IDing if they can't do the math, and it keeps people playing the game. But so you're a fan of the, like, before it was hooray we won or oh we lost. You're a fan of the like, we we didn't win nor lose. Like, you like having a middle tier where you can not feel great or bad.
Oh, I mean, I think, the thing is like both people come away. The thing is, and this is why I like Lorcana, right? Is it's a much more inclusive community to come into. And like,
Right.
We get in the debate about like whether or not that's a participation trophy. Like we've heard the millennial nonsense for our entire lives. But what I will say about this is like you both come away having won a game. You are both winners in that. and that feels better to go into your next round and see. It's like, obviously it feels great to get that 2-0. Whenever
Right.
you get a 2-0, you're like, yes, I'm gonna
Sure.
move on to my next round and stuff. But when you go 0-2, right, that hurts. And like, especially now if you go into like a 3-game format, it's like where you go 2, 1-0 and stuff. It's like, well, you don't get points for that in a 3-game format. It's like a 2-1 is 0 points, just like a 2-0 in a 2-game format. And I think having some some sort of semblance of like, what, I can go 1-1 and I can maybe fight my way to a top slot if I go 2-0 in these rounds and stuff, knowing that some folks have intentionally drawn, or hey, there's those prize tickets I can get, so I can get my hat or mat or something on the wall. There's something there for everyone. And like, think about how many people just wouldn't have gotten those things if we based it off of a system where we were doing 3-game formats.
Well, I mean, that's not very entirely fair to say, right? Because I mean, they do a good job of keeping us in the tournament with things like prize tickets, and they can do that with something like best of 3. I do also think that the bonus point needs to be there. I think it can potentially be adjusted, but if you remove the bonus point, then you're essentially playing best of 3, where you're just not letting anyone play the 3rd game. Because then, in a best of 3, the tie, you each get 1 point and the winner gets 3 points. Here, it would actually even be worse than that, kind of, because the ties would give you 3 points and a win would give you 6 points, whereas compared to a best of 3, you'd be getting 3 times the points you did from a tie.
But is that right? Break down that math for me. I'm not sure.
So in a best of 3 tournament, if you win a game, you get 3 points, and if you tie a game with someone, you get 1 point. Each person gets 1 point. So you're getting 3 times the number of points for a win versus a tie.
If you intentionally tie in a 3-game format,
right? Intentionally tie, or even unintentionally, right? Or unintentionally,
right? Because if you lose like
you get 0 points, right?
You get 0 points, or even if you go 2-1 and you're the 1 player, you get 0 points.
But if you get an unintentional or intentional draw in a best of 3, you get 1 point. Whereas in the 2-game format, you get a tie, you get 3 points. But if you were to win without that bonus point, you'd be getting 6 points, right? And what that means is you're only getting 2 times as many points for winning as you are drawing, which I think is too little of a gap. I think that's why originally they had it giving you, they originally did the 1 point versus 3 points. They did it exactly like a best of 3, and they realized that was too far of a gap, and so I think they shrunk it. And I think the 6-3 ratio, the 2-1 ratio, I think may be too small, and that's where they came up with the 7th point on there. There are likely people at Ravensburger doing way more math than
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm still not a fan. I mean, if let me say this, listener, if you tuned out to that whole math debacle, I totally understand. But I'll say is I think the bonus point, I disagree. I don't like it. I think it should just be much, much simpler. I don't think there's any real reason for it.
Yeah,
and
I think
you're winning 2 games, and
I think there's a reason we don't know.
Why get a?
I think there's a math reason behind it, is what I'm saying. I think it has to be there. I agree with you. I have the same sentiments about it. I just think unfortunately, I think it has to be there based on the math.
I don't know that it does. I mean, I think like what would be the math? Well, you know what? Honestly, I'm curious. No. Actually, no. I do want to ask this. What's the math reason behind it?
Well, like I said, the idea behind it probably has to do with the extrapolation across the whole tournament and how many people are going to get, X number of points on average, and how many points that's going to equal to for their cuts. We look at a 2,000 person tournament, we already see so many people with the exact same number of points. If we weren't awarding that 1 bonus point, I think we would have an even larger group of people at each point
Yeah,
distribution.
I mean, I don't see that. I think you're right about that, but I don't think. I think the answer
I
there
think it's a
is
less
not
clean tournament.
is not. But I mean, people already get upset about the fact that only like 3% of the entire tournament make it to
Right.
top cut the next day, and so like I don't know. It's like there's still plenty of people that are on the bubble, right?
Right.
It's not like it's like and
Well, it
I'm
also has to do with
making
the
it up.
promos they're giving out too. So maybe it has to do with they don't want to be giving out let it go promos to everyone who gets top X plus, right? And they would
I'll
be
be
giving
honest
out
with you.
probably
I
double
don't.
the number of promos.
I
Right?
don't think they. I'll be honest.
You don't think they care?
I don't think they care about that. For one, for a promo to Ravensburger is what, like 2 cents,
5
if
cents.
that, like not
Yeah.
even. And stuff, they're printing them at all. The
Wow.
more people that get them, the happier folks are. I think, actually probably ease some of the frustration of that 3% bubble. If like you knew it's like, oh, well, I've got a shot for at least the Let It Go promo, even if I
Right.
don't make it in a day two. Obviously, most people want to make it in the day two. I would just say it's like the answer to this problem isn't, adding extra point, this bonus point. It's just adding more rounds of play.
Well, it's in theory, right. Yeah, I mean that's the ultimate answer. The bonus point is just rewarding better play, right? That's what it sort of boils down to. You go 2-0, which is the best possible play you could do in the round, and it's rewarding that. And I think the idea is it makes a cleaner tournament. Like you said, you don't have as many people getting bubbled, and it's not necessarily a matter of their feelings. It's a matter of if you have a clean set of records of 1st through 64th or however many you're cutting to, then you feel you have a more statistically more likely that those are the best players, right? And not just someone who beat Timmy and his aggro deck 3 times versus somebody who beat like pro players 3 times, but they both bubbled in the same way in like a tiebreaker.
But this is the like counterpoint I would have though is that the bonus point also rewards you having luck on your matches, right? So like a good player, a skilled player,
skill can't. They're the same thing. They're the same thing here because you just as much as you could outskill your opponent, you could sit down against someone and luck into it.
No, absolutely not. No. Because you can only be prepared so much in a game. And what I'll say here is, right, like when you're sitting at that table, it's like you've strategized against matches, and some matches you're favored against and not favored against. And you're hoping when you sit down at that table on those unfavored matches that at least you can win one game. And if somehow you lucked into this like favorable matches for all of it and stuff, and you sit down at the table, now you get an extra bonus point just because you're lucky. Are you kidding me? There's no skill. That's not skill.
You can't say that just because sometimes people get lucky that some winning isn't considered a bonus for a skill. You win the event, the round, you get a bonus point for being skilled. Yes, sometimes luck will win you the event over skill, but that's why I said skill and luck are the same thing. They're the leads to the same thing here. Yes, sometimes luck is what gets you that bonus point.
All right, they do lead to the same thing.
I'll say that we shouldn't be giving out bonus points because sometimes, Vince, you get a bad matchup and I have to play Bucky 7 times in a row. And
but I mean,
what I think it boils down to is that I don't think we should make it easier to win one of these events. I don't think we should make it easier or more inclusive.
Suggesting
getting
we should
points
make it
for
easier.
Tying, taking away points for winning the games, making top cuts bigger than 3% or something like that. I think we should be doing everything we can to narrow the playing field to the best possible players. And not
do you know how you do that? Do you know how you do that, Andy?
Awarding bonus points,
more rounds, not by bonus points. More rounds. You play more games. You play more games. You don't award magical bonus points.
All right, gentlemen.
You do good.
We have ventured.
They're magical. Get good points.
Yeah, the magical good points. Yes.
What's the next question?
What's the next question?
We have ventured way too far from Constituent's Corner. We are now in Algebra Alley, guys. We need to move on. Should we save this next question for next week and move on to Villain?
No, let's do it.
We're fired up. Let's roll. All right, the last question this week is from Jamie.
We're doing it live.
Another local player here. She asked, what is the difference between changing the meta, like the winner of an Atlanta DLC, for example, and accidentally playing a bad deck when you are trying to be innovative? Before I pass it off to you, Vince, I want to just give a quick answer and say the way to know that is if you're me, Andy will tell you that it's a bad deck and give you 13 reasons why you shouldn't play it. So that's my answer. Vince, what do you think?
Yeah, I think what I would say here is sometimes people are too innovative, right? Like, I'll say this much is like, I think some of these decks we've seen that are topping these DLCs are innovative. They're interesting decks. I don't know that necessarily makes them good decks either. I think it makes them, they're good players behind them. Like for instance, the deck that won, was it Bologna? Is that right? In Italy, the
Item deck.
Items
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, it's like I don't frankly think that's a good deck.
Good
But
enough.
it worked. It worked for them. The same way that like I'm uncertain about the Perdita deck that won Atlanta. It was an interesting deck. Worked on it a lot, worked through all the outs, knew that deck very well. I think what it really boils down to is A, are you playing a competitive deck? And B, how well do you know that deck? And that's, I think, really what ultimately makes it. And so the only way you can do that is by playing that deck consistently, thinking about making different tech choices and playing those, and playing against other decks that you are weak against, so you know what their play line is. We talked about him earlier, but I think Jesus, which is I think he's one of our better players in the area. I would argue even probably one of the top players of our area, and I think one of the things that put him in that category is that he plays a lot of decks, so he knows a lot of the decks, and then he wants to play against those decks. And then
Or
he
play
finds
the
interesting
decks.
tech. Yeah, and he finds an interesting tech choice to do it. He told me today, he's like, man, everybody's doing Steel Song now. And I was like the only person that was doing it towards the tail end of Ursula's Return, which is true. He really was the only person in our area that was doing the Steel Song deck at the end of the tournament. And he's like, well, now I've got to like start from scratch, and like, because he wants to find that like dark horse deck and stuff. I don't think some folks need to do that. Like, I don't, it's fine to go find a deck and what we would call net deck, take it off the line and like build it. So that's where I'm at. Andy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's actually somewhat of a distinction almost between what you're saying, Vince, which I completely agree with in recommendation. Take something you love or something you want to get into, practice it, tweak it, adjust it for the meta, play other decks around it to
both
get
sides of it.
Right. Yeah. Play both sides of it. Get a good play other decks. Get a good sense of how it plays against decks but at the same time, I think there's almost a distinction between that and sort of what the person at Atlanta did. If I'm not mistaken, from their interviews and things like that, they weren't like this. They're not like, well, I've always loved Amber Amethyst, and so I just figured I'd try and make it work. It's what I was comfortable with. They are a very talented deck builder. They specifically sat down in what some might have even called a solved meta, where we had very prominent showings of different types of decks, and they were able to simply lay out cards and think, what cards will I need in these scenarios to help me advance my win condition, to help stop their win condition? What is this sort of perfect combination, this sort of perfect brew of cards? And I will say that is almost impossible to do. You have to be very, very good at that. And if you are very, very good at that, you're winning DLCs in Atlanta. If you're not very, very good at that, you're getting laughed at by your podcast co-host and being called a jank player. Okay. It is not a fine line. It is a very difficult honed skill. I think it is definitely much more worth your time to try and play a deck that you know and love and build off of that. And one thing I will say, you play this deck. Vince has been playing Ruby Amethyst forever, right? He knows how to play Ruby Amethyst. He probably played other decks. He practiced into it. He's making these tech choices. He's looking at the new cards to put in his Ruby Amethyst deck and stuff like that. He's realizing Ruby Amethyst is on its way downhill, and he's trying to find another bandwagon to jump to. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
But,
I mean, it's true. That's
right.
exactly what I'm.
But
like,
he looks at this. One thing I would say, if he doesn't do this already, or someone like in his sort of position, if you're in that kind of position, build the deck from scratch. I used to, and still do a lot of the times, open up a bunch of Ruby Amethyst decks, and I flip through them, and then I start building my deck. What are all their 1-drops? What are all their 1-drops? Okay, they have these 1-drops, they have those 1-drops. Why do I put... And I built my deck like that by just sort of mashing a bunch of them into one. Try building it from scratch. You've played 10 different Ruby Amethyst decks. You've played 10 different blue steel decks. Try building it from scratch. Try putting way too many cards that you would love to see in your deck, that you've played with, that you know work, and then go and trim it down to, okay, well, do I want this card or that card or something? That is not this insane, difficult, innovative deck building, process, but it will help you better understand your deck and why you have certain cards in it. And it can help bring you to that aha moment of, okay, maybe this card is worthwhile in the current meta. And I've said it here before, your meta is different than our meta. We have 20 different shops we play at in our local area or whatever. You
play
at. Yeah. But there's tons of shops, and you have your shops in your area. They are largely affected by a number of different things. People who want to play certain archetypes, people who want to play certain colors, people who want to play certain characters. So, play what you love, and don't worry about so much building something from the ground up. Look at just trying to tweak something here or there to try and bring something new or different to what you already know works.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something we talked about. Oh, sorry.
No, go on, Brad.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's something we talk about a lot on here when we give advice for prepping for big tournaments or for the set championships. Is play what you know, and if get reps in, go to your local leagues and feel out your decks. I kind of hinted at it without interrupting too much with Andy that the reason why I'm playing the hyper aggro Daisy deck right now is not because I enjoy it. One, I had the cards to do it. It's really easy to build, but at the same time, I can see what it feels like to be on this side of it and know what to expect, because everybody's talking about this Daisy Duck card and how quickly it is to get to 20. So I'm like, okay, let's see how that works, so that when I very much expect to be up against it for the next several weeks in league and case tournaments, whatever have even in Seattle probably, that I'm going to run into that, and I need to know what their thought patterns are, what their lines are, how it looks, what to expect when I'm playing my blue steel or my green yellow or whatever I cook up. And then when I build that, I have the idea of how this meta deck, or if it stays in the meta, is going to run, and what each one of my turns is going to ideally be, and how I can prevent them from getting the 20 before me. So I strongly recommend, and I think Andy was the first person to tell me, I think him and Kirsten do it all the time, where they build decks and they play each other from each side of it to see, how it feels and how to avoid scenarios that are going to lose you the game. So that's one of the things, and be attentive of what those troublesome decks are. Like when you're playing a lot, you'll start to see like, this card is like ruining my games. I'm not having a good time when I go against this deck. How can I change it? And my whole set 4 basically was, I knew Bucky was a terror, and so I just built a blue steel deck to counter it. I didn't do anything else last set. The most fun I had last set was the last 2 weeks when the Ursula Returns tournaments were over, because I was starting to play like Mufasa decks and stuff and having fun with it. And then when something didn't work in some of the games I was playing, I went and I tweaked it, and then I wondered, hey, could this be a better turn 4? Could this be a better turn 6? And you're
Yeah.
constantly, it's to a fault sometimes where I'm like, I'll just be sitting here and be like, oh, wait a minute, I forgot that card existed. Maybe I should slot that in. And there's so much that goes into to countering the meta, or and don't let anybody discourage you. I'm never discouraged when Andy tells. I joke when I say that my decks are bad, but
Well, that's because Andy's joking, right?
yeah.
You know.
But I mean, some of it might come from the mindset of like, I don't think that's the best card for what you're trying to do with this deck, and like I was trying to do a Steel Song one time with Namari because I like the idea of the Queen combo and her attacking readied characters and stuff, and don't have to get all into it. I know we're running low on time, but it's fun to be innovative. I have all these ideas. The hardest part is putting all the cards together and making them work, because then you're constantly tweaking, and I don't know what the moral of my spiel here is, but I wanted to provide at least my thought process when I'm doing all that.
No, I think everybody's opinion in this is important. I think the one thing I will say is we spent a lot of time talking about competitive decks as well. And one thing I want to emphasize that I think, Brad, you touched on here is that I don't think there's any bad deck if you have fun with that deck. If you go to a league and you have fun with that deck, whether it's a puppy deck, broom deck, like we've talked about, this Mufasa deck, as long as you go in and you have fun, that's really the basis of what Lorcana is all about. We gear a lot to competitive play because that's kind of what's fun for us. But don't be discouraged, just because, something you see isn't on one of these DLC lists or these top lists doesn't mean that it's a bad deck. If you go out in these league places and you're having a blast, or you're sitting down at the kitchen table with your family and friends and, just having Disney Lorcana fun, that's a win in my opinion.
Yep. I see it kind of as like, the half court shot in like a basketball game. It's maybe not consistent, doesn't happen all the time, but when it happens, it's almost more fun than a regular shot in the basketball game. So I enjoy these kinds of decks. When I see a puppy deck played, even whether it does well or not, seeing these quote unquote innovative combos that may not be good enough and consistent enough to play in a competitive tournament over 6-7 rounds and a top cut, seeing them played and the player having fun and the way those interactions happen are honestly sometimes the more fun than watching the same Bucky deck discard someone over and over and over again.
Well, I could say, Andy, you built that Titans deck for that the son of one of our league players, and you just see the joy that happens in playing that deck, and it's a lot of fun.
He told me, how many times he told me he whooped your butt with that deck? He whooped your butt, and then he told me, he was like, he's lucky I didn't have my Titans deck because I would have really whooped his butt. And I was like, I don't know that Vince could have handled that.
I know. I just cried a little bit.
My favorite story from the same kid, and I tell everybody this, and this will be really short. I know we need to move on, but one night I had an all Robin Hood characters deck, green steel, and I played him and another kid probably his age. And I took it a little bit easy. He plays with his cards face up, and I didn't do the mean things like steal from the rich and take all his lore away from both of their lores away from him and all that stuff. And he won that game, and he went home. Heather told me the next day, and I maybe teared up a little bit because she was like, it made his day when he went home and he told his dad that he beat the Lorcana boss at Lorcana, right? And he calls me and you that because we run that league there or whatever. And then to hear that he went to your sealed event this past weekend and do so well and talk, and just have such a great time, that warms my heart more than anything to see. I tweeted it on our official Twitter that, the one thing that makes me the happiest in this game is watching these kids have fun with it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
To be clear, the mayor might be saying he went easy on him. He didn't. That it's a rightful win.
We are rough on me tonight.
You have a history of losing to children, Vince.
Don't remind me. But with that, we can move on to Villain of the Week. And this week we have, without ado, it should be no surprise, it is going to be Daisy Duck. This is a Amber card, 1 cost uninkable Donald's Date, and it has a 1 strength for willpower, and it quests for 2 lore. It is a super rare character. The ability is a big prize. Whenever this character quests, each opponent reveals the top card of their deck. If it's a character card, they may put it into their hand. Otherwise, they may put it on the bottom of their deck.
It's not a May.
And,
Yeah,
it is not a May ability.
Yeah.
And it's a storyborn ally, and I really wish I could pronounce the artist here. I think it's Francesco and Giuseppe, but I'm apologize. I'm not going to even try to pronounce the last
Dual
name
artists,
there,
huh?
Dual artists, yeah. So what do we think here?
Well, I put her in there today because I feel like, we've seen locally and even, I guess, across Facebook groups and everything, everybody wants Daisy. Even before the set came out, this Daisy card's going to break the meta. And we have seen a lot of people. I just talked to 2 people from a local store last night, said that out of the 20 people there, more than half of them were running this card in some form of hyper aggro. She's kind of beefy. She is a 1 cost. I don't think there's anything at the one drop level that can deal with her with the 4 body. That's the biggest problem with her, is she comes out with 4 willpower and can't be dealt with in 1 turn. She quests for 2, and it just encourages more hyper aggro. And with all the other bodyguards and stuff within Amber, it's pretty easy to protect her and just get the lore in 4 or get to 20 in 4 or 5 turns. So yeah, I figured she would be worthy to talk about. She's a very hot item right now. I know you were upset you didn't pull a lot of them in your first couple boxes, but Andy, what do you? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I managed to get 2 of them.
You got 2,
and two non-foil, and I think I have 1 foil. So I think I have 3 total. I will say this card has gone up on TCG Player. I was looking at it this afternoon, and I think it's around $19 with shipping. So very one of the more expensive cards in Shimmering Skies. It's not the most expensive card. I think that is still Prince Naveen.
Or Naveen. Yep.
I think Naveen is actually the highest. It's probably pretty close between the 2.
They're both
pretty close. Yeah. But I think Prince Naveen is a little bit higher, but they're both pretty close. But yeah, this is for a super rare, pretty expensive.
Yeah, I think it says something for sure that we looked at those top 4 lists, and the 2 yellow steel decks both had basically their only new card was this Daisy Duck. I do think that this card is better for non-aggro decks, I feel like. I feel like this slots into Steel Song really, really well. With aggro decks, obviously it's a great card. Obviously it's incredibly good, but I feel like a lot of the answers to Lilo, Maleficent, Merfolk, Flynn Rider, a lot of those existed and didn't care about the willpower of the character. You've got Brawl, you've got Little Sisu, you got Big Sisu, you have Madame Medusa, and so I feel like even things like Cloud Kicker, Under the Sea.
But by the time you play any of those, she's already quested for 6.
Certainly. Yeah. But you've also drawn cards and filtered through your deck for those answers and things like that. It's obviously very early on, and I think there's a reason she's the villain of the week, because we're not even 1 full week in, and there's already so much discussion about this card and how it affects. I do think it will fit into decks that are already good. I think the aggro, the sort of Giga aggro Amber Amethyst is better now. The coin flip is more favored towards them now. But I still feel like it's kind of in the same spot. A lot of the matches I watched people playtesting in these, they would play the Daisy Duck, and I thought to myself, what if that was a Lilo or Maleficent? Because that's what it was before, right? And those cards are still in that deck. And a lot of times that I watch that, I think to myself, okay, well, they don't have the answer for the Daisy Duck, but they also don't have the answer for if it was a Lilo or Maleficent on turn 1 or turn 2 or turn 3 right? And so by the time they're getting the answers, or by the answers that they have, there's only a few of them that can't be used on Lilo and Maleficent, but can be used on Daisy Duck. And so,
But I think that's the gap that matters, though, right? Is there are answers
sure,
for the Maleficent and the Lilos that take them off the board, that don't have the exact same effect on Daisy. So Daisy can stick around longer, and that's.
I just feel like, yeah, you're right, and I mean it is inherently better. I just feel like ultimately what ends up happening is that if you look at if you looked at a sample size of 1,000 games where they played Daisy on turn 1 like they're supposed to, regardless of the opponent that they're playing against, by turn 3 or 4 when that Daisy is actually answered,
They have
would a
something
Lilo
more.
would a Lilo or Maleficent have been able to do the exact same thing, right?
No, absolutely. I don't think so.
No, because
I mean,
those are one bodies that just get challenged or pinged off like immediately.
Yeah,
Right.
You've got the.
But what are they being challenged or pinged off with, right? A lot of these decks, if
Fire
you look
the
like
cannons,
Or
boom.
Big Tink when they get there, but by the time Big Tink comes out,
right.
The ideal line here, right, is
cards,
Daisy. Go ahead.
But I guess I'm just saying that like a lot of people aren't playing these early cards. That the aggro wasn't a problem. Lilo and Maleficent weren't a problem, so people aren't playing things like the Rush Queen. People aren't playing things turn 1 and 2 at 4 drops in the Ruby Amethyst, 4 1-drops in the Ruby Amethyst deck. Very little in Red Blue. You end up giving your opponent cards and getting them closer to the answer of Brawl, Little Sisu, ramping to Madame Medusa, Fox bouncing to a Fox, which really, I guess in the case of the Fox, you're bouncing, and so you had that character that could have taken out a Lilo or Maleficent. I just feel like you won't find that when I'm playing Giga Aggro, a Lilo, Maleficent, or Daisy Duck is perfectly fine with me. And there's some scenarios where I honestly would want the Lilo or Maleficent more. I think Daisy Duck is going to shine in maybe less Giga Aggro decks that still have good things to fall back on, like a Steel Song, where they can.
If I'm playing aggro, I can't imagine a situation where I wouldn't want to have a Daisy Duck over a Lilo or a Maleficent.
I mean, what if your opponent doesn't have a Little Sisu in hand and you quest with Daisy Duck and it gives them one, right? That's the scenario you don't want, right? Or it flips over something and it just gets them one card closer to the Brawl or the answer that they have. That's what you don't want.
Yeah, but I mean, like, the thing is an aggro player, though, which I'm not really, but if you're an aggro player, do you really care? Like,
no,
it's all gas.
Point flip.
It's
right, and
all
that's
gas.
why
all gas. It's
right,
all gas. So I'd take that. I'm going to take that bet anytime, because the thing is that 1 for 4 Daisy Duck is going to stay on the board and be much harder for my opponent to remove than any other card that I play in that 1-drop slot and stuff. It's the thing is I know if that Lilo goes down or that Maleficent goes down, I'm getting 1 turn out of that if I'm lucky. The same goes for that Curse Merfolk, right? It's like you put Curse Merfolk down and stuff. It's like, I know I'm going to be lucky if I get that, that survives another turn. And there's a cost to getting rid of that. But my thing is, like, I cannot, the only pathway to removing this on 2, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, right? It would be a Fifth Queen. That's the only way to remove this off the board on turn 2.
You just play a Goons on 1 and a Rush character on 2. Anything on 1 and then a Rush.
You're saying on 2. Any run,
any Rush on 2 really makes this. The problem is you don't want to have to spend those resources to do that, and so people are still going to run things that are more efficient, like a Brawl and a Little Sisu and stuff like that. But I guess my sort of point here is like the game you and I played, Brad, where you just had like 4 Smees on board or whatever. Even though Merfolks can be answered, even though these Lilos and Maleficents can be answered, the aggro decks really are high rolling on just being able to play these characters. And yes, your probability of being able to get across the line and get far enough and then go bounced for the win or something increases when you have this Daisy Duck. But obviously Ravensburger made this a 1 cost, 2 lore, 1/4, which is, I mean, previously it was 1 cost, 2 lore, 1/1. They gave 3 additional willpower to this character in exchange for you giving your opponent a card, essentially, every single time that they quest. Now, it's a character card, but I would argue that even in a lot of these decks, the filtering of just having that card go to the bottom is still not a terrible thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, unless it's that brawl and it goes right to the bottom of the deck.
Brawl or
brawl that you
song,
need, right?
Yeah.
So I think we'll find that the math might come out on this that basically says it's not, the
Andy's
value
always
that
bringing
it's
it
at.
back to the math. Always
We're
to
back
the,
in Algebra Alley. It's scary
yeah,
over here,
bring it
man.
back into algebra.
The
What, Brad? What are your thoughts?
I've played it over the weekend. I played it against Ron. It didn't feel good. We had a best of 3 with it, and it's just, I told him later, I'm like, man, I get it, because I haven't played this since set 2 with the Arthur combo, the same combo, Amber Amethyst, and it's all gas. There's the most fun I had with this deck over the weekend was at Grapes when I played a mirror match with Jimmy for fun, just to see how it feels, because I played against a Steel Song at the beginning, which was teched against the Daisy, with Daisy, but with the Queen and all kinds of stuff to deal with my low to the ground people, and then I played Mikey in his deck, and I let him have fun with it. So it wasn't a real game, but to him it was, and he got the dub on that. But then, but what the point was, the most fun I had with this deck was the mirror match, because I had played it enough already to know what I'm trying to do with this deck, and then trying to answer his board and get to 20 before him was more interesting to me than actually just playing this brain dead aggro, because essentially the line on this entire deck is to play Daisy on 1. She's already protected with the 4. You can't do anything about her for at least 2 turns. On 2, you play another 2 1-drops like the Lilo and Maleficent, or 2 Lilos, whatever, get you 2 lore. So you're already questing for 6, which will put you at 8 after 2 turns. And then on turn 3, you're playing the Donald Bodyguard to buff one of them up for 1 more lore. And then anybody that wants to challenge into those, or Baloo. But if you play Donald, he buffs up another extra lore, then you get another 7 lore on that turn by questing with the Donald buff, and then anybody that wants to go into the aggro that still exists on the board has to go through Donald first. And at that point, you're just so far, you're already at 14 lore on turn 3, and it's like, what can you do about it? Of course, Blue can ramp up to Steel, Big Tink to take out all the 1 cost and then just start to pick it off. But at some point, if you don't hit that line on the counter, you are going to be so far behind, and they just have to get something out there to quest a couple times, and the game's over. It's fast, and you're not doing anything but questing, and maybe once in a while a little bit of control with the Fox and some other stuff, but it's a lot.
So the question I always ask, right, is if we were to Rada this, how would you do it? Or would you do
3.
it? I think is always
3 willpower.
3 willpower, or make her not a 1-drop.
3 willpower.
Because
if
she's not a 1-drop, if she comes in at 2 or 3, then the opponent's going to have the answer on the next turn. Possibly, if they have a Zeus or something, or can sing it, or not Zeus. Well, yeah, maybe. If she's a 3 cost, yeah, somebody could sing Zeus on 4. But
3
I don't
cost
know.
would be insane. This card would be bad at 3 cost.
Yeah, yeah.
You can get 2 4s with 2 lore at 3 cost. At 2 cost, you can get a 2/2 with 2 lore. You can get a 0/4 with 2 lore at 2 cost, I believe. To
be fair,
here.
I never think about the answer to this question before we do that. After you ask it, I'm like, oh yeah, Vince is going to ask, and I have no idea how I'm going to answer this. It was easy on Dime or something to spitball some things. How I would change this card, I don't actually know, but I just know that everybody wants her, everybody's playing her, and she she's reinvigorated the hyper aggro deck, and it's kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I will say, I don't think I would errata this at this point. I think it's a problem, like card for sure, that needs an answer to. But I am not convinced that it is the card that it is the like. I will say this is I do not think it's like Shimmering Skies Bucky, right?
No,
It's
no,
not
no,
the
no.
card.
And I don't want to set the
everybody
precedent
think
that
it's going to be.
I think it will be based on how prevalent it is.
I don't know.
But
I don't think so.
the thing
Bucky
is,
was
like,
just not fun, and maybe we get to a point that this deck, everybody's playing it and it's not fun. But like Bucky really changed things, right?
Oh my god,
where discard just as an archetype.
Bucky left the game, got married to Becky.
Yeah, so I don't think, like, I don't want to set the precedent that every villain of the week should have an errata or whatever. She is a problem. I think she can be dealt with. It's just it puts a lot of pressure on you to deal with her fast. And again, like you pointed out, it does come at the cost of your opponent getting cards when she quests. So I mean, it's not such a bad thing if you get that answer from that. But yeah, it's paired with all the other aggro. There's other cards that came out this set that even buff the deck even more. With the Amethyst Chromacon gives you and your opponent a draw. The gain knowledge card is just an instant 2 lore that you can play for 2 ink. And so it's just a fast deck, and you gotta prepare for it, and everybody wants to do it, and that's what the problem is.
Yeah, I will say, like, I think tempering my expectations here, right? One is I think you can play like a fairly heavy character deck to like guarantee that if you see this, you're going to hit those characters. So that's one option you have. I think the other thing, though, is where on the caution side, I would say this is one area I might change my mind is depending on how much Rapunzel's Tower is played. Because then you could move this to Rapunzel's Tower. And then I think it has
Little
some
Sisu,
interesting
Brawl, Medusa, Big Sisu. There's plenty of cards that still exist that will get rid of this.
Sure. But
she's never going to see Big Sisu unless she's a late game play. Like a turn 1, Daisy should never see Big Sisu.
You could Big Sisu on turn 4 now?
No, she's a shift 6. Oh, if you ramp with blue red, yeah.
Shift 6, you can play her on turn like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
You can ramp really fast and play those.
Yeah.
I think I'm with Vince. We don't need to errata this. I think it will fall out of flavor. I think a lot of people will play this and realize they have no control over the game of Lorcana that they're playing when they play this deck. That they are shuffling their cards, dealing them out, and letting the game play itself. Essentially, you don't have very much agency when you play a deck like this, and a bunch of the people will flip the wrong way, right? And it won't win. They will just lose. The opponent will have the answers, and I think it'll still be very, very prevalent. But I don't think I don't think it will push aggro into being a top tier deck.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yep. We'll see. As always, put your opinions down in the comments or tweet at us. Also, if you think that there shouldn't be any other bonus points in the 2-game format, let us know your opinion down below. But I believe we got one more thing from Brad, the mayor.
Just a quick thought I forgot to ask at the beginning of the show. Did you guys see that Disney World's getting a Villain's Land?
Yeah,
we gotta go. We gotta go.
Of course I knew. I knew. They consulted us. Yeah.
Of course.
I must have missed that meeting. I must have been in a very important meeting at the time.
Mr. Iger.
Yeah.
The one thing I think they do need in the Villain's Land is the spiral shoot from Emperor's New Groove that Kronk and Yzma go down. Come on. What a ride that would be, right? Exactly. That would be a fun ride for sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I know if you're on Disney Twitter. I will say one thing is I never quite considered myself a Disney adult until relatively recently, although I probably should have. But I like went down the weeds of D23 because I was so excited about Lorcana news, and I was like looking more about D23 stuff. But people have some opinions on the potential expansion at Magic Kingdom for Villains Land. So
check that out in the rules of Disney Parks, our sister podcast. I do want to say though that Rules of Villainy podcast does award bonus points if you subscribe. So
you know what?
Vince doesn't agree with him. Yeah.
No. I 100% agree with him. 100% agree with him. And with that, thank you for listening. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. We're also on YouTube, so please be sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified of our next episode. Until next week, stay safe, fellow villains. Be wary of wannabe heroes who want to disrupt your villainous plans. And as always, remember the rules of villainy.